So let's get to this Rittenhouse thing. Couple of things I want to touch on, and I just want to sort of, from the beginning, let me just say, look, I'm not a lawyer, not an attorney, took some law classes, wasn't for me, but I think that there is a responsibility that we have, particularly people who are doing some kind of reporting or talking about this, which I've taken up the cause to talk about this because part of my whole thing is institutionalized racism and how the justice system needs reform and the justice system is corrupt and all of this kind of business. So, in order to do that kind of analysis, you have to have certain conclusions and you have to have a certain understanding of what the court looks like, what people are trying to do in cases, juries, as far as what lawyers are trying to do and accomplish, what judges are trying to do and accomplish. So, and I also believe that you have to be fair, right? Part of being truthful is to be honest and to be fair. So my view of this whole thing is going to come straight from my opinion about how I see just, a common man and common sense view of these things. If I were a juror, and I've been summoned many times, I think 10 times or more, and I've been a juror at least 3 or 4 times. And if I was a juror, and part of what we are asked of Americans as part of your patriotic duty is to, number one, come with an open mind. Number two, this is the most important thing with respect to this case as well as the Arbery case. I don't care how much video you have or whatever. Person is innocent before proven guilty. That person has to be proven guilty. The prosecution has to prove the guilty, and they have to be guilty of the law as the law is written. And if we should all know by now, every state has different laws. And one of the things that we've talked about, and people should already know by now, is the Second Amendment. Along with the Second Amendment, a number of states have passed many a law that will give people the ability to discharge their weapon and kill people. There's no longer in certain states a duty to retreat, right? There was at one point in time a duty to retreat where, it was viewed that it's more important to not take a life than to take a life based on, stupid stuff, let's say. But we no longer are in that time. There is no longer this duty to retreat. Certain states have stand your ground. I don't think that, I don't know if Wisconsin does, but we need to remember that if a state passes that law, that is the law. You have that right to protect yourself, whether we like it or not, liberal or Democrat, or Republican. So I say that also, and I also want to say, my general view of kids is that they're dumb, they're stupid, and kids do stupid things. And the laws should recognize that. I said that, and that was my belief with respect to Trayvon Martin. When it's an adult versus a kid, the adult should have a higher standard placed against them, because an adult is an adult. They have a certain ability and processing of the mind. The brain is fully developed. You should have reasoning. You should be able to see in front of yourself, see the outcome of your actions, right? We expect that of adults. We don't expect that of children because children are stupid and they do stupid stuff. That's the other thing that is very important, I think, to remember in this case, as opposed to, say, the Arbery case, wherein these are all adult men who are behaving and doing what they're doing. So those are two really important things that I think that I have to put out there with respect to my analysis. I think in general, that's my feeling about kids. Rittenhouse is a child. He's 17 when this happened. He's legally a child. He's not 18 yet, although he's 18 now. But he was 17 when he was a kid. So I think he was a stupid kid. I think some of these people who were shot and injured were pretty stupid and pretty irresponsible. I mean, how do you go around concerned about your safety carrying a gun and you don't have a vest on, a protective vest? And I'm thinking of Grosskreutz, Kyle Grosskreutz, who is one of the witnesses we'll talk about. But let me just get over somewhat breaking news. This is new news as of today. as of this morning. And the first thing is that Bruce Schroeder, who is the judge, has dismissed misdemeanor weapons charge against Kyle Rittenhouse on Monday prior to the start of closing arguments in his homicide trial. I thought that of all the things that he could definitely be convicted of, this was one of them. And it is the charge possession of a dangerous weapon. Excuse me. Charge possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18 was punishable by up to 9 months in prison and a $10,000 fine. Why this judge decided to throw this out, I have no idea. Rittenhouse now faces 5 felony charges and, if convicted on the most serious charge, could face a mandatory sentence of life in prison. Closing arguments will be given up to 5 hours on Monday. Kenosha Circuit Judge Bruce Schroeder will issue jury instructions, and then the jury of eight men, 10 women will be narrowed to 12 people by the drawing of names before deliberation begins. I wonder if that's how they do that there in Wisconsin. I've never heard of that. This is interesting. Prosecutors requested the jury be given instructions on provocation after arguing Rittenhouse provoked Joseph Rosenbaum by raising his gun and pointing it at somebody, which led to Rosenbaum to run after him. The judge agreed to allow the panel to consider whether Rittenhouse provoked Rosenbaum into attacking him and thus negating self-defense. Ellie Honig, a CNN senior analyst and former prosecutor, said the provocation instruction was an important win for the prosecution. Honig said the instruction allows prosecutors to argue the defendant went too far, used deadly force when it wasn't necessary, and he provoked the attack and hence cannot argue self-defense. So I don't know in the end how, I think a lesser charge is always going to be good for this prosecution because of manslaughter. Tough. Again, because this is a state that loves its Second Amendment and all the stuff I talked about. I think Wisconsin is basically a state that really believes that people have a right to bear arms and to defend themselves. So, second thing is, and I didn't talk about this, but there is this reporting that came out on the stand, which I think I mentioned, but did not have an opportunity to go into much detail. But Rosenbaum, one of the men killed by Rittenhouse, was mentally ill. Rosenbaum had been released from a hospital the day of his death and was dropped off in downtown Kenosha. Although it is not being shared with the jury, Rosenbaum had been in the hospital for mental health treatment after a suicide attempt. In a criminal case like that against Rittenhouse, a jury would almost never hear information about either the defendant's past, if it is not directly related to the case, or that of the past of the victims in the case, if it is not something that the defendant would have known. Prosecutors asked the judge in the case to allow them to introduce information about some of Rittenhouse's past conduct. This is something that became a huge issue, and I'm going to play that video in a moment about how that went. But let's go into this, and I want to get into Rittenhouse on the stand. And when I heard Rittenhouse was going to go onto the stand, that's when I made the real decision to do a video on this, because again, I don't think that you have to have a degree in law to know that it is one of the riskiest things in the world to do, to put your client on the stand. A person has a right to remain silent. That becomes an issue, by the way, later on. I don't have the video of that. I couldn't find it, but one of the ways that the prosecution got sideways on the judge early on was that the prosecution, and I watched this live, so that's why I know. The prosecution tried to infer that there was a reason why he was remaining silent and sitting back and just listening to testimony before he decided to get on the stage. And that is absolutely, as the judge goes nuts over this, and actually he touches on it again on this other issue, but he goes nuts. And basically the law is that you cannot infer anything by a person's right to remain silent. It's a constitutional right. Everybody knows this. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. That is the Miranda warnings, right? So a person has a right to remain silent. He can assert that right, and a jury cannot infer anything devious or bad about his right to remain silent. But the prosecution goes there, he cuts it short, sends the jury out, and begins just laying into this prosecution, who, you know, I don't know why he went down that direction. You know, I personally think that, by the way, with regard to this judge, a lot of stuff said about this judge. One of the things I will say is I like a judge who is pro-defense, pro the defendants. I said this earlier, I'll say it again. You know, we want to have judges out there who are looking out for defendants. You know, unfortunately, that doesn't happen with people of color. But as a general note, the fact that you have a judge that is looking out for the rights of the defendant, I think, is a good thing against the prosecution. But he goes nuts over the fact that this guy starts to go over his right to remain silent, which is an absolute, as he says, a basic tenet of law. But I just want to go over this Rittenhouse's testimony, because to put your defendant on the stand, which is something he does not have to do, you have to have confidence that he's not going to fall apart on the stand. He's not going to say something that's going to incriminate him. He's not going to get sideways with the judge, sideways with the prosecution, do stupid stuff. You have to make sure that he's going to stick to the script. He's going to be unflappable. He's going to have his dates and facts and everything correct. He's not going to perjure himself. It's so incredibly risky. And the defense obviously must have believed that this kid could do it. And in my opinion, he does. I mean, he really is unflappable. He really is able to take on these questions and does not break at all, even though the prosecution is a good prosecutor. Prosecutor, by the way, is an a-hole, in my opinion. This guy, I do not like this guy. So let me just say that on the outset. He's doing his best to do what he can, but I think that if he is one of the most hated prosecutors around because he's arrogant and pompous, I would not be surprised if there was a whole lot of history about this guy. But anyway, let me get into this video. This is the first video. This is Kyle Rittenhouse on the stand. It's talking about what he was doing while he was there. And the defense is getting really good information about this kid. Basically, he's an upstanding citizen. He's going around and he's a medic and he's going there to help people, to watch graffiti, to stop fires. This kid's a Boy Scout. Play this video.
The orange box by your feet you refer to as a Pelican box?
Yes.
Did you have that before the 25th?
Yes.
Was it stock?
Yes.
With things that you had bought and brought?
Yes.
And do you go with that every day, or is that because of the situation?
It was in the trunk of my car.
Okay. And the fanny pack, what's the situation with that?
It was my work bag. I brought it to work with me and I would put it under my lifeguard booth.
Okay. And that had first aid supplies?
Yes.
Now, after the meeting here at 63rd and Sheridan Road, what's been referred to as Car Source 3, what happened?
After the photograph, I believe, I don't recall exactly, but there was about 2 or 3 vans that pulled up, like big vans with people inside of them.
Okay, and what was their role in this evening?
Well, they showed up and they wanted to protect the business, and I didn't really have a say in what everybody was doing. I was just there doing my first aid stuff, and then Ryan Ball said, hey, why don't you guys stay here, and we'll go down to the car source number 2. Right here, I don't remember fully, but there was a fire down the alleyway where they were trying to set the building and church on fire, and me and Mr. Balch, and I believe somebody else was with us. We went to go put that fire out.
Did you put it out?
We did.
Then what did you do?
Around that time, we saw Ruther Central High School on fire, the front doors, and we were walking north down Sheridan Road to go put the fire out. and then somebody else put the fire out before we got to Luther
And when
Central
you
High
say the
School.
front, is that right here on
And you had gotten furloughed there when COVID hit in March?
the orange box?
Sorry about
by
that.
your
I'm
feet
going to
you
play
refer
that
to as a Pelican
where I
box?
left off.
And me and Mr. Balch, and I believe somebody else was with us. We went to go put that fire out.
Did you put it out?
We did.
Then what did you do?
Around that time, we saw Luther Central High School on fire, the front doors, and we were walking north down Sheridan Road to go put the fire out. And then somebody else put the fire out before we got to Luther
And when
Central
you
High
say
School.
the front, is that right here on Civic Park?
No, sorry, that's my mistake. You're walking north on Sheridan. It's the side of the building on Sheridan Road, towards the left when you're walking north.
In the general area where you had tried to help remove graffiti earlier?
Yes, in that photo to the right.
Okay. And during the evening, was there any friction between your group and protesters / rioters?
No. The only type of stuff that happened was the person that attacked me first threatened to kill me twice.
Okay. And the person who threatened to kill you, we now know was Mr. Rosenbaum, correct?
Yes.
Before August 25th of 2020, had you ever seen him before?
I did not.
Had you ever done anything to upset him?
No.
Now, the orange box by your feet you refer to as a pellet?
Okay, so I thought that was a boom, 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 perfect. Yes, no. Explains himself. He's going around. He's just doing great stuff for the community. The thing, in my opinion, that particularly if Rittenhouse were black, one of the things that the prosecution you'd want to do is get the sense that this kid's an outsider, right? And he is an outsider. He's from Illinois and he's coming into Kenosha. He doesn't belong there. He doesn't have any roots there. It's not where his home is. Later on, he says that my father lived there. I don't know that prosecution or that anyone went to check to make sure that was true. But this kid is an outsider. He's come from outside. And one of the things that you would want to get from the jury is to pull in a sense of community. Like, we don't want outsiders coming here and, doing what you want to do, patrol or do whatever, or take video or whatever. And we know that was the basic thing that was going on there, both on the protester side and on the so-called militia side. People were coming from all over the 50 states or 49 other states to come and be a part of this and to express solidarity and express outrage over the shooting of Jacob Blake. So the idea is that if I were the prosecution, you want to tap into the sense that this kid is an outsider, he doesn't belong here. What the hell is this kid doing here? This is a total mess. And he needed to be, gotten rid of. I know if he were a black kid, that's exactly what they would be doing. Like, this kid doesn't belong here. He's an outsider. The other thing is, and this is not touched on by the prosecution where they made a lot of mistakes. A significant number of mistakes. I don't know. These are the things that I was looking for. Let me just say is that and they could be doing this in a closing. I don't know. I won't know until after this video, until later on. But what I would do is I would do chapter and verse. Listen, in 2020 and 2021, after George Floyd, there were protests everywhere, all over the world. Every state, I think all 50 states had protests. You had protests in LA. You had protests in Chicago. You had protests in Portland, Oregon. You had protests in New York City, in Brooklyn, in parts of Florida, in parts of Texas. You had people out in the streets, the same sort of stuff. Hundreds of protests and people out there. And of all of those protests, everywhere, all over the nation, within the last whole year, I'm sure that there are some that are going to pop up again, and sure that have been gone out over the year. Never out of all those protests has anyone been shot but this kid in this protest. He is the first kid ever of all of these protests to shoot and kill 2 people and injure a third. That is one thing that I would be looking out for in the closing. I don't know what the closing is, but we'll get to that. We may go over that on next week's show. But that would, to me, be one of the most significant things. All of these protests, all of these folks out there, you've got to figure thousands of people out there. And this kid is the only kid who shoots 2 people and injures a third. That's significant in my view. Second thing, so this next video, listen, I could go over the whole video of Rittenhouse crying. I don't know that it's significant in terms of the analysis of the whole outcome of this. It's only significant if this was staged and if this was planned and if the prosecution didn't do anything about it. I think that they tried to. The judge sort of stopped them. I think it's undeterminable, if that's a word. I don't know what the effect of something like that is going to have on the jury overall later on, but it is what it is. But I don't think that's as significant. I think that what's more significant is the judge going after these prosecutors. I mentioned earlier, and it's not in this clip, but it's in another one, that the judge really took the bark off of the prosecution over the fact that they started their cross with Rittenhouse talking about his right to remain silent and sort of inferring that he was sitting back and basically had malicious intent because he was remaining silent. The judge took the bark off of him on that. He goes after him again on this. But also, let me just say with respect to Rittenhouse, when you see him testifying, it's yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, no, sir. There is opportunities where he's being allowed to sort of talk more about what he's thinking, what's in his mind, what the behavior of other people, what's in their mind. It's not in this clip, but it's in others. I don't know. Maybe the prosecution knows this judge, but I mean, those are objectionable, statements. You can only testify to what you know and what you see and what you encountered. You can't ascribe reason. You can't, unless you can know who people are, what their motivations were. Hernandez, who's a right-winger commentator online, this guy just walks all into that. I mean, he's so not blatantly, but clearly hostile and clearly on the side of the defense. It's pretty shocking how much he just gets away with being able to blurt out. And I sort of want to go over in this piece, and I just want to play it, that the prosecutor sort of gets off on the bad side of the judge, and I've said that the judge, I think, is maybe on the side of the defendant. In general, I don't have anything against that. We can ascribe the motives of this judge as far as racism and anything like that. I don't know. I haven't been in a courtroom enough, but I've never seen a judge be so on the side of a defendant before. I don't know if that's anything, but let's play this video, and I want to go over the significance of it, and then I'm going to also play an additional video. I'm going to probably come back to me and then get into that additional video because I think it's important of something that Rittenhouse does that's really important, again, that he has to do on the stand. This video is more about the prosecution getting into it with the judge. Another factor that could help this kid Rittenhouse walk on these charges.
And you had gotten furloughed there when COVID hit in March?
Yes.
And you'd only started working at the Recplex on August 14th, correct?
I believe I got hired before that, but I was on vacation on August 14th, so I was on vacation, so I couldn't start until August 14th.
Your first time working at the Recplex was on August 14th, correct?
I believe that was my first day.
And then you worked the week after that from August 17th to August 23rd, correct?
I believe so, till August 24th I worked.
And then your final shift was on August 24th, correct?
Yes.
You worked a total of 41 and a 2.5
This
hours.
section is pretty long, so I'm actually going to fast forward. This is longer than I
number you
thought it
got.
was going to be, but
And
I'm
you
going to
were
fast
like-
forward to significant
Yes.
part.
You were walking around their swim area. Okay. So, but that was the. So they've got a water park area with a slide and a zero entry pool. Is that right?
Yes.
And then next to that, they've got a larger, almost Olympic-sized pool where swim meets happen.
Out watching the different areas of our zones.
You indicated that at no time did this gun, this AR-15, ever leave the state of Wisconsin. Is that right?
Other than the night after, other than that,
Before the shootings.
correct.
There was a time, though, where you wanted to have it with you down in Illinois, isn't it? It wasn't there?
I believe there was a time when me and Dominic were mad at each other. Yeah,
You were mad at Dominic,
me and Dominic were mad over something.
and you wanted to have the gun with you down there?
I think I said something along those lines.
You'd agree with me that. Let me back up for a second here. You have testified to this jury that you used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, the man who attempted to kick you in the face, and Gage Grosskreutz on the night of August 25th, correct?
Yes,
And you did that because you felt that your life was in danger from those four people, correct?
yes,
And you are telling this jury that it was, in your mind, justified to use deadly force to protect your own life, correct?
yes,
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force. Please listen to my question and answer my question if you can. You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
yes,
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to stop someone from smashing the windows of an unoccupied parked car, correct?
I don't think you could use deadly force for that.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a metal dumpster on fire, correct?
Correct,
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from tipping over a porta potty, correct?
correct,
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a flatbed trailer on fire, correct?
correct,
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone who is about to start an unoccupied car on fire, correct?
correct,
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting some traffic cones in the middle of the street on fire, correct?
correct,
So you understand that there's a difference between using deadly force to protect yourself and using it to protect someone's property, correct?
I'm going to ask you to go into the library again for a moment, please. Please don't talk about the case.
He's either forgetting court's rulings or attempting to provoke a mistrial in this matter. He knows he can't go into this, and he's asking the questions. I asked the court to strongly admonish him, and the next time it happens, I'll be asking for a mistrial with prejudice. He's an experienced attorney, and he knows better.
Mr. Finger?
First of all, Your Honor, this was the subject of a motion. I'm well aware of that. And the court left the door open. This-
For me, not for you.
my understanding of
You
your...
should have come and asked for reconsideration. You did on the one motion, and in fact, I granted your motion for reconsideration.
That was not our motion.
Excuse me. I did. I granted.
We did not move
That
to
was
reconsider.
their motion.
We have not filed
forgive
any
me.
motions to reconsider
Forgive
in
me.
this case.
That was their motion for reconsideration, which I denied. But I said I denied it, or I indicated a bias towards denial is what I did. Held it open with a bias towards denial. Why would you think that that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, well, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
May I respond?
Yes.
We filed an other acts motion on this exact issue because, in my mind, and I argued this, it is identical to what was going on the night of August 25th, in the sense that the defendant was using this exact same weapon. He was using it in a manner to try and protect property.
No, he wasn't.
Your Honor, with all due respect...
I'm not going to rehash the motion. That's absolutely untrue. No. Your arguments of record, my comments are of record, and why I ruled as I did is of record. There's nothing that I heard in this trial to suggest anything's changed. Even if you're correct in your assumption that you know more than I did at the time, you should have come to the court and say, I want to go into this. Why you would think that you could go into it without any advance notice to the court, I don't understand that. And as the defense is pointing out, you're an experienced trial lawyer, and this should not have been gone into.
Your Honor, there have been...
Okay, I'm going to cut that off early. There was something else I want to touch on, but I want to touch on this a little bit more. But this was an interesting back and forth with the judge because of, getting back into this idea of the judge being sort of, more on the side of the defense, and also this idea that the judge is not only biased, but this comes up later on about this evidence, some of the evidence that the prosecution wants to bring in versus the defense, and the judge being unclear on exactly what it is he wants to do. The prosecution goes for it, and it's like the judge goes ballistic over it. Again, these are things that I think are helping Rittenhouse if he ends up skating on this, if he ends up walking on these charges. These are things that are going to help him out along the way. And I think that there are more mistakes on the side of the prosecution than anything else. Again, our view of the Second Amendment may be different, but, especially liberals, progressives, different about that. But the fact of the matter is that this is a new world that we live in, and people have a view of the Second Amendment, and it is what it is. There's no duty to retreat anymore. People have a right to defend themselves with deadly force now. And, we have to adjust to that new world, whether we like it or not. But this was a mistake that the prosecution made that I think, and I wanted to show it because this is much more important than Kyle Rittenhouse crying, in my view, on the stand. Here is Rittenhouse again. And again, I'm just going to play a little bit of this and cut out of it. But this is another example of, I think, a good witness, somebody who is taking the stand and really knows how to answer questions. Yes, no, as necessary, blah, 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 blah.
You characterized Mr. Rosenbaum as advancing on you, speeding up towards you, but you actually slowed down, didn't you?
Because of the people around the cars, yes.
But after the shooting, you run around those cars and head back towards the direction you originally wanted to go to, right?
Yes.
So those people didn't stop that, did they?
They weren't there after I shot Mr. Rosenbaum.
They scattered after you fired your gun 4 times, didn't they?
Yes, they weren't there anymore.
And you've heard Dr. Kelly's testimony that the first gunshot from you to Mr. Rosenbaum caused Mr. Rosenbaum to start falling to the ground. Did you hear that testimony?
I did.
And then you continued to fire 3 more shots into him after that, didn't you?
I continued to fire until he was no longer a threat to me.
When he's falling to the ground in front of you, he's no longer a threat to you. His pelvis is broken, right?
I don't know.
But he's fallen to the ground, isn't he?
I saw him lunging towards my gun, and I remember his hand on the barrel of my gun.
Because he was trying to push it out of the way so you wouldn't shoot him.
Sustained.
What was the risk to you of death or great bodily harm at the moment you killed Joseph Rosenbaum?
If I would have let Mr. Rosenbaum take my firearm from me, he would have used it and killed me with it and probably killed more people if I would have let him get my gun.
Mr. Rosenbaum never said anything to you about taking your gun, did he?
He didn't say anything, but he tried to take my gun.
And whoever's got that gun is a threat to everyone else?
If he would have taken my gun, he would have used it against me.
Let's break that down. First of all, you had already prevented him from taking your gun by running.
All right, that's it. They could go into a little bit longer, but that is excellent response. That is good rehearsal. Just stay with that whole idea. If he'd taken my gun, that gun, he would have used it against me. That's exactly the self-defense argument. In addition, and I don't know if it was allowed in, I don't think it was from what I was reading. If that jury knows that this guy was mentally ill and that he had just come out of a, basically, what do they call it, a 5150, or he had just come out of a mental hospital that day and was suicidal, and he had gotten that gun, he would have used it. I thought that was an excellent response. He would have used it on me and everybody else. So here, this guy, Rittenhouse, looks like, I need to kill this guy because if he gets my gun, he's going to kill me, and he's going to probably use that weapon on the other people around him because he's crazy. Sorry, but I thought that was excellent in terms of a defendant really showing, the importance of him having to defend himself. Because again, he comes off as a hero. I am not only protecting myself, but I'm being responsible. I'm protecting other people who might get my weapon, and in the hands of this crazy man, he might kill other people. I want to take a look at this now. This is, I think, the best of the prosecution. This guy, Grosskreutz, Kyle Grosskreutz. I'm going to call him Kyle because his last name is tricky. So, this is a guy who is another guy. He's packing heat. He's supposedly going there to be a medic. He talks about his oath and why he decided to be a medic and this, and he wants to help people and all this kind of stuff. And, I find that personally counterintuitive that here you are carrying a weapon, but yet you don't want to kill people. Carry a knife, carry pepper spray, carry a bat. You don't carry a gun. Anyway, he says on the stand that he believes in the Second Amendment, of course. And, one of the things that the prosecution does that I thought was really good is they contrast this guy with Rittenhouse, right? Rittenhouse, and this is mentioned in the trial, Rittenhouse is going there to be a medic. He's going there to protect things, but there's a lot of people going there to protect things, and everyone is sort of giving themselves their own assignment. And his assignment is going to be not only to protect, but to help people who might be injured and might need medical assistance. Because he claims, to some people he tells, that he is an EMT, he's licensed EMT, or he has training in that area. Of course, that breaks down on the stand. We find out that he was lying about that. Grosskreutz, on the other hand, truly is somebody who has taken medical courses. He's somebody who has done this before. He also is wearing a hat that says medic. I think it might even be on his shirt. Whereas Rittenhouse is walking around with his AR-15, and I don't believe, from what I saw, he had any indication other than he's asking people if they need help and all this kind of business. By the way, I mean, when you look at some of this video, which I don't think I cut any of this in the video, for a place that's like burning down, rioting, there is nobody but these militias on the street, from what I can see. Nobody. So, and this guy Hernandez, who is, again, a right-wing guy, I'll play some of that video if I have time. This guy is talking about this place is explosive, people are burning stuff down, houses are burning down, yada, yada, yada. There's nobody on the streets but these clowns, but these militias walking around so-called looking for stuff. Rittenhouse is going around so-called looking around for trouble and looking to run to wherever there's another fire, or run to the next place of issue. let me also just say, this guy Rosenbaum, I believe very much that the Black Lives Matter protests and all these, and I've said this on this podcast, that they were infiltrated by anarchists. We know that when it came to George Floyd's protest, we know that because there is video of a guy busting out the windows of a I can't remember the name of the AutoZone, I think it is, and busting out the windows, and he was gonna it appears gonna try to burn the place down. So we know that there were people who were there just to start setting fires. And whether that is to muddy up Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or if they just want to create a race war, want to create want to try to bring down the government, we know that there are people who are out there that were doing that. Some of these folks, and I think Rosenbaum or maybe even some of these other guys, they have nothing to do there. There's no protests around them. So what are they doing? If there's all these fires going on, who's setting these fires? That is never made clear. But one of the things we do know is that all of these videos that we've seen there, and you can look on YouTube and see them, they're all white folks. There are no black folks there. And they're probably people from coming out like Rittenhouse, coming from outside to join in on this whole thing. So that's my little bit of supposition. Let me go into this guy Grosskreutz. Again, he is a guy who's, as opposed to Kyle Rittenhouse, he really is a medic, and he really is going out there trying to help people and all. He comes across, again, he's very clean cut. He's white. He is somebody who is very yes, no, and all this kind of stuff, although the prosecution does a good job of muddying him up. But at this point in time, I think that he is very, he's clean cut, and he speaks really well. He comes across as an honest broker on the stand. And I think that this is going to be important for the prosecution if there is a protest. If people, I think he could very much seem very likable to the jury.
Approximately how many times would you say you were out there providing medical care at these demonstrations?
I would say about 75 days prior to August.
And during that time period, what sort of medical situations would you assist in?
Primarily, it was essentially people not taking care of themselves. I mean, it was a hot summer. People weren't hydrating. People weren't eating. People weren't wearing proper footwear. So I would say it was, by and large, nothing sort of like medical emergencies. It was very, like I said, people not taking care of themselves. So, like I said, providing water, providing food, potentially bandaging, sprained joints like ankles, things like that.
You mentioned earlier that you felt sort of an ethical obligation not to pick and choose the people you would treat. Did you treat anyone who needed it, no matter what their political beliefs were or what side they were on?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to move to the night of August 25th, 2020. On that particular evening, did you come here to Kenosha?
I did.
Had you been working at your normal job that day?
I was.
And do you recall approximately what time you left to come down to Kenosha?
7 p.m.
Did you travel alone?
I did.
Were you part of any sort of larger group or organization that was coming to Kenosha that night?
I was not.
Why did you personally decide to come down here that night?
Essentially for the same reasons that I stated earlier. We were all aware of what was happening in the days following Jacob Blake's shooting. People do have a right to demonstrate, and no way advocating for property damage or anything like that. But given the, I think we all can agree, chaotic situation of those 3 days following Jacob Blake's shooting, there was certainly a propensity for violence, or maybe not just violence, but injuries in general. And so for the same reasons that I stated earlier, I've delivered patients to freighter down here. I'm familiar with the area, and I felt that given my level of experience and knowledge that I could be of assistance to people.
When you came down here that night, did you bring any of your own medical supplies?
I did.
What kind of supplies did you bring with you?
Brought a tourniquet, what's called hemostatic gauze, also commonly called quick clot, chest wound seals, some gloves, some saline spray.
How were you dressed that evening?
I had a black shirt with a Wu-Tang sign on it. It's a pretty famous group. I had khaki shorts. I had tennis shoes, and also I had a blue hat with large lettering that said paramedic on the, on the front of it.
Were you carrying any of your equipment with you?
I was.
How were you doing that?
I had it in a small backpack.
Were you armed?
I was.
Tell us about that.
I believe in the Second Amendment. I am for people's right to carry and bear arms. And that night was no different than any other day. It's keys, phone, wallet, gun.
I want you to try and put yourself back in the frame of that evening when you heard him say something to the effect of, was it, "I'm working with the police"? Is that right?
Correct.
What was your reaction to that?
He's referring to Kyle Rittenhouse, by the way.
I found it odd, and very noteworthy. Previously in the night, an individual I had recorded, Mr. Balch, had described some sort of plan with the police that they were going to essentially push demonstrators south down Sheridan, and then past the car source lot, and then from there we're going to essentially retreat or back up that line. And Mr. Balch had explained that there was some sort of understanding, some sort of plan, to whatever extent that is, but that the police were going to push protesters down past the car source. And he said that then the police told him that it was up to the militia members, as they refer to themselves, to deal with them.
When you heard the defendant...
I'm going to stop it right there because I want to get to Hernandez's cross. But that piece of testimony, I think, is very notable. I remember hearing about that earlier. And, when we talk about collusion, we talk about the police, in On Tyranny, that book, part of what one of the warning signs, one of the issues that's brought up, Timothy Schneider book, excellent. I think it's been re-released as a picture book. One of the things he talks about is when the government begins to get its own private army, that it's pretty much over and done with. You can kiss democracy goodbye. We've become full on tyrannical. And this is what it seems like to me. This is what it very much looks like to me. And again, this is hearsay. And to the credit of the militias and the guy that he's talking to, they said they didn't want any part of that. It looked like the police was trying to set up the militias to take out the protesters by pushing the protesters towards them so that they could maybe instigate a fight where the militias could have their way with these protesters. This is the police saying this. We know that police handed out water to those militias. We know that they gave thumbs up and all that. Those videos are out there. But this is really, that piece of testimony to me was really scary and really important to look into. Now, to be fair to the defense, they really take the bark off of Grosskreutz, who later on through the defense, which, depends on what you're thinking in terms of what a person's rights are. I think that as far as community, Grosskreutz is much closer to Kenosha than this kid. I think he's actually in Wisconsin. He actually is a resident of the state, whereas Rittenhouse is from Illinois. But he sued later on the city. He sued I think the state. He sued everybody. $10 million, some ridiculous amount. So one of the things that the defense was able to get in is that there is a motive for him. If Rittenhouse is found guilty, that he has a better chance of winning his case against the city or the state or whatever. I don't know how true that is. Person has the right to sue whomever they want. So I don't know, maybe that will have some impact on the jury. Who knows? And the other thing is that he never mentions to anybody that he had a gun. And actually, he starts to get a lawyer immediately. He doesn't mention anything about the gun that he's carrying, and later on drops. So that could go into his motivation and how, clean cut he is. I thought that was actually really good on the part of the defense to sort of dirty him up, muddy him up a little bit. But I think he was a pretty strong and compelling witness. This guy is a guy who was shot by Rittenhouse. He's one of the survivors of the three. Of the three people shot by Rittenhouse, actually, three people. Actually, let me think for a minute. It's the guy by the car source, and then I think two other guys. So of the three or four people shot by Rittenhouse, he is one of the survivors, and a big chunk of his bicep is destroyed. I'm going to go very quickly. I may cut out of this video, but this is the defense witness. This guy who is a so-called journalist, commentator. He's a right-winger, and he is basically, and this is, I think, a big mistake on the prosecution, that they allow this guy to sort of run roughshod. He starts to go into stuff that I think you would object to, like saying, I'll talk about it after I played it, but this is Hernandez, the right wing journalist out there who has video. There's also a piece of this that really irks me, and that is the judge, which I don't have the video for, but the judge goes on and on and on and on about how in a particular case the prosecution wants to take a picture and they want to blow it up. And there's this whole issue about, well, is it altering the picture to do this? Is it altering the pixels? Is the color of the pixels changing? And the judge can't figure it out because he doesn't know anything about pixels and about resolution and all this kind of stuff. So he doesn't want to make a decision on whether they should allow this piece of evidence. Meanwhile, this guy Hernandez is bringing in edited footage. He doesn't have raw footage there. He's bringing in edited footage. I mean, you want to talk about the chance of manipulation. Edited footage is basically manipulated footage. I mean, going through the machine, whatever program that he used to create it, what kind of stuff did he cut in? What kind of stuff did he cut out? The fact that this guy was able to bring in this footage and prosecution did not go after him based on the same stuff that this judge has been unwilling to, just on a blown up picture, that he did not want to allow that in. That, to me, I think was a major, major missed opportunity. And this guy Hernandez just bugs me because, again, he's trying to act like he doesn't create footage when, in fact, he does. I mean, the guy is basically like, I'm creating video right now. I'm creating footage right now. I'm showing you video right now. Like, it's edited video. It's content that I've edited so that only the most, important stuff, or I don't have the full raw footage out there. But I'm creating a video. I'm creating this stuff. And this is what Hernandez does. He goes out there, he does commentary, he takes his camera, he shoots the video, but he doesn't say that he creates video or anything. He gets into these little petty sort of takes on this, which it bugs me. But playing this video.
So you don't live in Kenosha?
No.
Don't live in Wisconsin?
Nope.
You came up here because you wanted to cover the things that were going on in Kenosha after the shooting of Jacob Blake. Is that fair to say?
The violent riots, yes.
The violent riots?
Yeah.
By Antifa?
There were Black Lives Matter supporters. Antifa was present. This is all documented on video, yes.
You've made a lot of videos of what you consider to be Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots in Seattle, Portland, D.C., other cities, fair to say?
I haven't made them, I documented them.
Well, did you record them?
Yes.
Okay, so when I said made, you recorded video.
Yep.
And that's because you, and then you take that video and you post it on where?
Twitter, mainly, social media.
You also have your own YouTube channel?
Yes.
Do you have your own independent website that you operate?
I do have an independent website, yes.
What's that called?
DrewHLive.com.
I'm going to fast forward through this very
What is
quickly.
that?
That's my own independent website.
But is Real America's Voice?
Yes.
What is that?
That is a news commentary, breaking news website. They have their own apps and, website.
You know, again, this attempt to try and
Other
make it
than
seem
getting
like this
paid by Real
right-wing,
America's
probably
Voice,
conspiracy
you get
website that he is
$1,000
employed by is some real journalistic operation, which of course it is not, I'm certain.
Website part of Real America's Voice?
No.
The things that you post on your website, Drew H Live, do you also share those with Real America's Voice?
Depending on what's going on where I'm at. But this is,
And on Tuesday night, you were recording video with your body cam.
yeah,
You were also recording it with your cell phone.
yes.
The last video that we just watched there of the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, was that recorded on your body cam or on your cell phone?
Both.
I just saw one video. Were there more than one video that you just shared with us?
There's two. There's the body cam and then there's the cell phone as well.
What was the one we just saw?
I believe that may have been both.
Where is the body cam located when you wear it on your body?
Right here.
And when you recorded the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, where were you holding your cell phone?
Right here.
Okay, so the cell phone is, you're using your right hand, above your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Shoulder, same as my shoulder, right here.
And the body cam you said was over on the left side of your chest. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
The video that we just saw had a single angle. It didn't have two separate angles. So when you tell us that's both, I don't understand what you mean.
That means that there's two recordings of the same thing, and that's why I submitted to the defense and the prosecution the entire videos. There's maybe about 80 to 100 videos that you guys could examine for yourself.
I know all that. What I'm asking you is what we just watched.
Mm-hmm.
Which camera were you using to record that?
Both.
Is that
Now,
video
either
edited?
this guy is incredibly stupid, or he's obtuse, he's argumentative, or he doesn't know what the hell he's saying, because it's very clear that you can't show two angles at the same time unless it's a split screen, right? So this guy is out there talking about, I submitted this to you guys, and it's your job to this, that, and the other thing. Give me a break.
No, I have not edited it, but it has been put together at the right time, the timing.
Who did that?
Now, that's another, like, what is he talking about? What is this dance he's doing? I haven't edited it, but I put it together. That is an edit. That is, by definition, an edit. So, again, either this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, or he's just being difficult just to be difficult. And prosecution, I would have laid into this guy, but the prosecution's just sort of taking it calmly and in stride.
I did that.
So you combined two video sources into one?
With the same timing and audio, but at the same time, it could also be seen, the jury could see for themselves. If they look at the body cam footage, it's the exact same thing.
And by the way, he can't make that conclusion. I mean, it's not raw footage. He's trying to present this video as raw footage, and it is not raw footage. It is edited footage. It is created footage. It is footage that he has put through a process, digital process, to create new video. And he's sitting around and he's not admitting that. He's not willing to say. So, like, is he being obtuse because he just doesn't know what the hell he's talking about? Or he doesn't know what his, what these terms mean? Or is he trying to prevent from being boxed into something? Because if I'm the prosecutor, I'm saying, how can we trust this video that has been altered, that has been edited?
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Don't wag your head in response to the witness's answer.
What you said, if the jury looks at the body cam footage, is that separate from the cell phone footage?
Yeah, there's obviously 2 devices recording this today.
And you're telling me, after this incident, the shooting occurred on August 25th, 2020, you posted videos in support of the defendant after that, correct?
Can you repeat the date one more time?
After the shooting on August 25th, 2020, you posted videos on social media in support of the defendant, didn't you?
Define support.
You posted videos that you felt
Like,
would
are
help
we really
his case
supposed to believe
by
that he doesn't
showing
know what support means? Come on.
aggressive behavior on the part of Joseph Rosenbaum, for example.
I posted the same video that is evidence today.
And in your commentary associated with that video, you made some disparaging remarks about Mr. Rosenbaum, didn't you?
What would you say is that?
Do you remember what you said?
I'd like to hear it.
So you don't remember what you said?
I have no idea. I post on Twitter many times a day. I posted many videos. If you could specify what exactly you're talking about, I could correctly answer you.
Sir, I'm going to ask you a question under oath. Have you...
I will tell you that I don't typically...
This is the pettiness of this judge, this
remind
admonishment.
people that they're under oath. And it's happened a few times in the case here. It's not permitted. I don't think most judges do allow it. Of course, they're under oath. So it's actually a suggestion by the questioner that the witness is.
So when people think about, is this guy, this judge, being an equal arbiter? Is he somebody who's playing it equal on both sides?
Yes.
In
That's what
support
gives me doubt.
of Kyle Rittenhouse.
One could argue yes.
You've also been watching this trial while it's been going on, correct?
Yes.
And when you've been testifying, you've been referring to the defendant by his first name, Kyle, correct?
Yes.
And you've been referring to the first person that he killed as Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Instead of Joe or Joseph, correct? Is that yes?
Yes.
Do you, as you sit here today, do you personally know the defendant?
No.
But yet you call him by his first name?
That's his legal name. What else am I supposed to call him?
Mr. Rittenhouse or the defendant?
I'm gonna,
And you're aware that there comes a time in the video that you made where the defendant starts to run. Do you remember that?
I didn't make any videos.
Recorded.
Yes.
That is a lie.
There comes a
That
time
is a
in the
lie.
video
He
you
did. He
recorded
did make the
in
video.
which you saw Mr. Rittenhouse start running. Is that fair to say?
After Joseph Rosenbaum was lighting a fire in the middle of the street.
Now I would
He
have
had
cut
his
this
face.
guy off right now and said, "Objection. Answer the question. Yes or no."
First 3 walking.
Why is prosecutor
And a couple
allowing this
seconds
guy to go
after,
on
you
and
see
on
Kyle
about this?
Rittenhouse walk past the frame with a fire extinguisher.
The question I was asking you, though, sir, is there comes a time after that where in your video Mr. Rittenhouse starts running towards that car source. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And Mr. McGinnis, who is between you and the defendant, also starts running.
Yes.
And you start running.
Yes.
Why?
Because the rioters were saying en route to car source, en route to car source, and someone yelled out either burn in hell or burn inside or burn it down. It's hard to make out. But they were clearly displaying riotous, arsonist behavior prior to that and covering riots all 2020. I could tell something violent was about to happen.
Such as an arson or a fire?
Possibly, yes.
What else could possibly have happened?
At the time, that's what I was thinking.
So you were mostly concerned about running to get there in time to cover what you thought was going to be a fire.
Yes.
Was your decision to start running based on you seeing the defendant start to run?
No.
So you just independently decided to run at that time?
I just told you, people were saying en route to car source. Someone said burn in hell, burn it down. And the prior nights, the rioters were burning down buildings in Kenosha.
The people that you quote as saying those things, they're walking down the middle of the road, weren't they?
Some were walking, yes.
The people that say those things don't start running at the same time you do they?
I couldn't tell who said it.
Did you?
The guy just said that the people around him were saying it. Now he can't tell who said it.
Were any of them running towards the 63rd car source?
Some were way ahead of me, in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to tell.
So you didn't know whether those people way ahead of you were running or not?
No, it'd be too far to tell.
So I know you said you started running. What other people around you were running at that very moment? If you know.
Richie was in front of me, so I think Richie McGinnis was the one that started running, and then while we started hearing all of the noise and people saying burn it down, that's when I started to go run towards the car source.
This guy is a joke. He's a joke. And I thought that was a very, very good cross by prosecutors, because here it is, a guy, and I mean, this is the whole right-wing so-called journalists, so-called commentators. Here is a guy who said, I started running because I heard people saying they're going to burn it down. I knew these rioters, they're about to do something. These rioters, they're from my experience, my years, or all of the places I've gone to, all of my experience, I know what's about to happen. Bad things about to happen. All right, so who said it? I don't know. Are any of the people around you saying it? I don't know. Were the people way ahead of you saying this? I don't know. Well, then why did you run in that direction? Because I heard people saying it. What people? I mean, it's just like, this circular logic that is in the conservative mind and is in the mindset of this so-called journalist. He could never be a journalist. You would never be able to get past anything doing that. I mean, it is probably one of the most absurd statements that I wish, and I don't have the whole thing, I wish that there had been more of that from the prosecution, because at a certain period of time, you begin to unravel this guy. He's an empty suit. He edits footage, but he says he doesn't edit, or he says he doesn't create footage. He's out there videotaping stuff, but he didn't create anything. He's out there and he's a journalist, and a commentator, but he has all this experience of the rioting, and he hears riotous behavior. He hears the crowd and he believes that there is a riot happening, but he can't identify any of the people who said it. He's running in a direction nobody else is running in that, yet he believes the rioters are running there. I mean, it's just like, the mindset of these conservatives, particularly these so-called conservative commentators, and they're there on the ground, within the scope of these things, and nobody can point to any of the violence, any of the Black Lives. How does he know it's Black Lives Matter? How does he know it's Antifa that is doing these things? He has no idea what's going on. Yet he's clearly on the side of Rittenhouse. We know that because, as the prosecution said, he called him Kyle while everyone else is Rosenbaum or this one or that one. He's been tweeting. He's been talking about this online. He's been defending Kyle Rittenhouse. This is a guy who I think would lie on the stand and would do anything to help his buddy Kyle out to beat this rap. So if there was anything that, again, he has video, I would have never allowed that video in. I would have fought that video, because it's manipulated video. And if they're concerned about the video of edited footage, this judge can't also be concerned about a blown up picture, that it might alter pixels, and not be concerned about this edited video that this guy created for the court, which he said, I don't create videos. I don't make videos. Give me a break. Alrighty, guys. That's it for today. We'll know the decision, I think, by the end of the week, certainly by midweek. I'll probably tweet about it. The Twitter is, and everybody should know this already, I would think, but the Twitter is The World As I Like. In addition, the Facebook and Instagram are the same. Please tweet, and I tweet, and please follow the show on there. Also, please, if you have anything that you think that we can do to improve the show, please let us know by going to Instagram, by going to Facebook, by going to Twitter. Anything that we can do to change, anything that we can do to make things better for the show. In addition, if you want to support the show, the PayPal tip page is py.pl1pvcpy. That's py.pl/1pvcpy. So thank you again, guys, for this, for joining me on this one. And like I say every time, I hope to see you on the next one. Have a great and blessed day.